This is Cooper with FedRetirementPlanning.com, and today we're going to look at Dave Ramsey's thoughts on the thrift savings plan. Dave Ramsey, for those that don't know, is kind of like a financial advice guru. He's not necessarily a financial advisor. He kind of just has a radio show and gives a lot of financial advice, and a lot of people like the advice he gives. He has quite a few books out, and some are really good. Some of his suggestions I disagree with, but overall I think he has a good idea on helping people get out of debt and helping them, I guess, plan for the future, something that, a lot of people need help with. But a lady on Twitter asked Dave what he thought of the TSP Thrift Savings Plan accounts, and I thought it was real interesting to see his thoughts. And just like he suggests to everybody, his first suggestion is to be debt-free. Okay? He always suggests being debt-free except for your home. This is something, this is a tenet of Dave Ramsey's advice. It's always given, and I think overall it's good advice. I think debt can be a great thing. However, for the majority of people, they don't control debt properly, and so making a statement like this when he's reaching such a large audience and not just an individual, saying being debt-free except for your home is really, not too bad advice. I actually printed it off so I can look at it, but he also said you want to be debt-free, like I said, except for your home, and you want to have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months. So this is something I like to call the rainy day fund. This is something that I think is very important, and I'm glad he brought that up because a lot of people don't have the rainy day fund. Basically what the rainy day fund or the emergency fund is you sock away about 3 to 6 months of your expenses just in a bank account that is highly liquid. That way, if anything were to happen, you can draw from it quickly, take care of whatever problems arise, such as medical issues or any problems like that. And I think that's a really an important thing to look at before you start investing into things, is to make sure that you have money set aside in case something happens. Okay, we don't know the future. You could lose your job. You could have medical expenses that were unexpected, as most of them are. And if that happens and you don't have the money set aside, well, you're going to be in a tough position. And, you don't want to be in a tough position, and your advisor or, even Dave Ramsey, just a guy on the radio, doesn't want you to be in a bad position. But moving on, he says those are two caveats you should think about before even thinking about investing in the TSP. He moves on and he says if your thrift saving plan matches, we start with the TSP up to the match. Okay, so Dave may not be aware, but the majority of federal employees do receive a match. But he's saying if it doesn't match, there are people that invest in the TSP that don't receive a match. But if you don't receive that match, he suggests, or if you do, do receive the match, which is the majority of people watching this, you should invest up to the TSP match. And that TSP match right now is 5%. 5% is a really great match. It really is. Compared industry-wide, that's actually a pretty good match. He also goes on, if it does not, so for you that are watching that do not receive a match from your employer, then he says to start with the Roth IRA outside of there, because he would rather have a non-matching Roth IRA that grows tax-free than a non-matching IRA that grows tax-deferred. So essentially what he's speaking on is a tax-deferred account means you pay the tax when you pull the money out, which is a traditional IRA, or that's similar to a TSP in the traditional account. Whereas with a Roth IRA, the tax is paid as it's contributed, so when you pull it out, you're pulling the money out essentially tax-free, which is really a great benefit. If you haven't read on the Roth IRA, I have an article coming out that's going to compare the Roth TSP to the Roth IRA, so I'll put it in the comments section below. But then he goes, either way, if you maxed out your Roth IRA and want to do some thrift savings plan investing, or if you have one that matches, then he kind of gives a recommendation on how you should invest it. And he says that you put in a ratio of 80-10-10 or 60-20-20. And so what he's saying is put 60 to 80% in the C fund I believe 10 to 20% in the S fund, and then 10 to 20% in the I fund as well. So basically what Dave's saying is you should have your money in stocks. I mean, that's essentially his recommendation. Have 60 to 80% of your money in the C fund, which kind of tracks the S&P 500, which is the top 500 stocks in the U.S. And then he's saying have 10 to 20% in the S fund, which is a small cap fund. Those are small capitalization companies. Those are typically companies, let me think of some that might be in there. Maybe LinkedIn may be in there. Some smaller internet companies you would think of. That's kind of where small cap companies are. They have more volatility than the C fund. And then more volatility than that is the I fund. And the I fund is an international fund. And Dave's suggestion have 10 to 20% in the I fund. Now, my opinions on his recommendations, he's giving this for a majority of people. So, he's having to say for, everybody from just starting out to retiring and beyond should have it in this. That's not something that I agree with. Every individual is different. Not everybody should be weighted equally in each fund. And a lot of people want safety. For people that want safety, the G fund, although it doesn't earn a great return, is not a bad idea because the G fund is absolutely safe. Okay, so that a lot of that determines on what your risk tolerance is, and something that you should talk with your advisor on to determine, what you should be in. But he thinks that having your money mostly in stocks is the best way to go. Obviously, he says in the S and I funds, either put 10% in each, or 20% in each, and then 80% or 60% in the C fund. And he says put the vast majority of it in the C fund. And that's something that I've seen a lot of people recommend, and that's basically because the C fund takes the top 500 companies in the U.S. Basically, it's going to track pretty closely to how just the stock market's going. Okay, so if the stock market's up, it's going to have a very similar path, and if it's down, it's going to have a similar path. But you are diversified quite a bit. But that's basically Dave's thoughts, and then my thoughts on top of his. If you have any more questions on this video, or have any questions that you'd like us to specifically address, feel free to comment in the section below. We'd appreciate it if you like and share the video. Keep watching. I'm going to put a link to the article that I matched along with this in the description below at fedretirementplanning.com, and thanks for watching.